During a family drive, our 5-year-old daughter suddenly said, "Dad, the girl in the trunk is asking you to let her out." I saw my husband's face tighten instantly. His reaction was telling. Even if he tried to pretend otherwise, he glanced at our daughter through the rearview mirror, fear etched in his expression. "That's a scary thing to say. You shouldn't make up such stories," he replied, attempting to brush it off. I stared at him from the passenger seat, my eyes sharp. "Maybe we should pull over at the rest area," I suggested. It had been 5 years since we got married, and while I had always been the supportive wife, helping him through his busy work life, I knew that my daughter's unsettling comment wasn't a coincidence. Something deeper was at play, and it was about to be revealed. "Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and I married Patrick when I was 30. A year later, our daughter Doris was born, and she has been growing up healthy and full of energy. Now 5, she's the light of our lives." Despite our busy schedules, our little family was filled with joy, at least, that's what I had thought. "How about we go to the zoo next Sunday?" I suggested one afternoon. "Yay, I want to see the giraffes," Doris squealed, her excitement filling the car. I smiled, feeling a warmth inside as I listened to my husband and daughter chat happily. Patrick had always been a caring husband since our dating days. Even after Doris was born, he continued to be an attentive father. On weekends, he eagerly joined in on family outings, and I often thought how lucky I was to have him by my side. But as I basked in these happy moments, I had no idea our peaceful days were on the verge of unraveling. "Huh? You're being transferred to a different department?" I asked one evening, taken aback by the news. "Yeah, company policy. They want me to get experience in different areas," Patrick explained, looking exhausted as he walked in the door. His new assignment was in one of the busiest departments, which meant he would have less time for family. I could see the weight of the news pressing on him. "Daddy, does this mean you won't play with me anymore?" Doris asked, her voice soft and worried. Patrick sighed, placing a hand on her head. "I'll do my best. Sweetie, we'll still go to the zoo. I promise." Watching them together made my heart ache. I could sense the strain Patrick was under, even if he tried to hide it. This transfer wasn't just a job change, it was a shift in our family's entire dynamic. I wanted to reassure him, but there was only so much I could do. "Please don't overwork yourself," I urged, knowing how he tended to bury himself in work when stressed. I didn't want him to burn out, but my fears quickly became a reality. At first, Patrick managed to balance his hectic schedule with time for us, but within a month, everything changed. His late nights became the norm, and family outings dwindled to nothing. The man who used to cherish every moment with Doris was now barely home long enough to say goodnight, and when he was home, his temper was short. "Can you take a day off next Sunday? Doris misses you, and you've been working so hard," I gently asked one evening. "Who do you think I'm doing all this for? Should I just stop going to work and get fired?" He snapped back, frustration spilling over. "I'm just worried about you," I said softly, but he didn't listen. "That's not your concern. By the way, make sure we have enough money for next week's client dinner." I was stunned. He had become a man I barely recognized, angry, distant, and spending recklessly under the guise of work. Yet, I didn't feel anger, only a deep concern for his well-being. I wanted to believe the man I loved was still in there somewhere, buried beneath the weight of his responsibilities. Months passed, and things only worsened. Patrick came home just to sleep, and Doris, feeling abandoned, grew quieter, her bright spirit dimming. I tried to come up with ways to bring him back, but the harder I tried, the more elusive he became. Then tragedy struck. My mother, who had been ill for years, suddenly passed away. "No, Mom," I cried, grief overwhelming me. She had been my only remaining parent, and the loss hit me like a tidal wave. I sat frozen in disbelief when I received the call, unable to process the pain. But Patrick's reaction was worse than I could have ever imagined. "Do I really have to go to the funeral?" he asked coldly, his voice devoid of empathy. I stared at him, stunned. She was my mother, our family, and he couldn't even muster a shred of compassion. His indifference was like a knife to my heart, and in that moment, I realized the man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who had become a stranger. "What are you saying? Of course, you have to go," It's a family funeral, I snapped, my voice tinged with disbelief. Don't get mad at me. Ugh, why does this have to happen now? I had plans, too, Patrick responded, rolling his eyes with irritation. His complete lack of remorse left me stunned. I had expected him to at least offer some comfort, maybe a hug or some words of support. In the past, he would have done so without hesitation. But now, as he sighed and mumbled in frustration, he was a far cry from the man I had once envisioned spending my life with. Patrick didn't lift a finger to help with any of the funeral arrangements. I ended up handling everything alone. On the day of the service, Patrick remained distant, barely saying a word. As soon as it ended, he muttered, "It's over now, right? I'm heading home first." Without offering any assistance in cleaning up or even acknowledging the emotional weight of the day, he left. At first, I was confused by his cold indifference, but by that point, I was too exhausted to feel anger. All I felt was an overwhelming sense of disappointment. No matter how overworked or stressed he might have been, there was no excuse for how he acted at my mother's funeral. "Mom, Doris will help you," my daughter said sweetly, sensing my frustration. Together, we finished tidying up, her little hands doing what they could to lighten my burden. Afterward, I decided to stop by my parents' house for a moment. It was close by, and I felt a deep pull to spend a little more time remembering my mother. Doris and I arrived, and as I unlocked the door, the familiar scent of home greeted us, filling my heart with a bittersweet ache. But something strange happened the moment we stepped inside. "Mom, wait," Doris suddenly said, her face serious. Before I could respond, she bolted toward the back room. I had taken her to my mother's house many times, but I had never seen her act like this before. Intrigued, I hurried after her. I found Doris standing by the old dresser in my mother's bedroom, pulling open the second drawer from the bottom with purpose. Inside, she found something, a hand mirror, delicate and antique. "Mom, Grandma wants you to have this," Doris said, holding up the mirror. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The hand mirror had been one of my mother's most cherished possessions, something she rarely used and kept hidden away. I hadn't seen it in years, and Doris had never even known it existed. "What? How did you know this was here? And what do you mean Grandma wants me to have it?" I asked, astonished. "When Grandma was sleeping earlier, she told me that you were sad and asked me to give this to you," Doris explained innocently. Her words sent chills down my spine. There was no way she could have known about the mirror or where it was kept. My heart raced, unsure whether to be spooked or comforted. In disbelief, I decided to test her, asking her about things she couldn't possibly know about tomorrow's dinner plans, thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud. During the funeral, my daughter, Doris, had been able to answer questions she couldn't possibly have known the answers to. Each response was spot on, leaving me baffled. Somehow, she had this uncanny ability to know what people were thinking. "Wow, Doris, you know everything," I said, stroking her head, still trying to process it all. Mysterious abilities were something I thought only existed in stories, but here it was real and right in front of me. She beamed with pride, her hands on her hips, as if she were fully aware of just how remarkable she was. "That's right, Doris knows about Dad, too," she added with a sly grin. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. What she told me was shocking, unbelievable, even, and utterly unforgivable. A few weeks later, after my mother's funeral, I decided to test the waters. One morning, as Patrick was heading out the door for work, I casually mentioned, "By the way, Doris and I are visiting my friend next Sunday in the morning." Patrick stopped in his tracks, frowning. "Really? Oh no, I'm off that day." "That's too bad," he said, his voice dripping with artificial concern. I smiled to myself, masking the emotions simmering just beneath the surface. Now that I knew the truth, I felt nothing but indifference toward him. On that Sunday, I took Doris out for a short drive, spending about an hour away before heading back. "Dad's over there," Doris said, pointing toward the garage as we returned. The shutter was down, and I could feel the tension rising. Taking a deep breath, I approached and knocked. "Patrick, I know you're in there. Open up," I called out. From inside, his voice sounded flustered. "Rebecca, I thought you and Doris had plans." It got cancelled. If you're going somewhere, we'd like to join you. I could hear him hesitating. My intuition told me exactly what was going on behind that door, but I stayed quiet, letting the moment unfold. Doris wants to go for a drive, I added, using our daughter's innocent wish to force his hand. Reluctantly, Patrick opened the garage, and we set off on a drive together. I sat in the passenger seat, watching him from the corner of my eye, knowing full well that our marriage had already reached its end. Those happy days with him were long gone. Hey, did you know Doris has a special power? I finally said, breaking the silence as we merged onto the highway. Patrick furrowed his brows, dismissing my words with a nervous laugh. What are you talking about? That's silly. Daddy, the girl in the trunk wants you to let her out. Doris suddenly chimed in from the back seat, her voice unwavering. I didn't miss the way Patrick's face paled at that moment. He stiffened, his hands tightening on the wheel as he glanced at our daughter through the rearview mirror, panic creeping in. What a creepy thing to say. Don't make up stories, he muttered. But it's true, Doris insisted. Maybe we should pull over at the rest area, I suggested, watching him closely. Patrick shot me a panicked glance. Huh? No need for that. It's just a kid's joke. Doris has a mysterious power, you know, and it's pretty hot today. If someone's really in there, it could be dangerous, I added calmly. Realizing he couldn't brush off my logic, Patrick grudgingly steered toward the rest area. When we arrived, I left Doris in the car, the cool air conditioning keeping her comfortable, while Patrick and I stepped out. You said there's nothing in there, right? Let's check, I said, my tone firm as I gestured toward the trunk. Patrick hesitated, clearly on edge, but knowing he had no choice, he reluctantly opened the trunk. As soon as the lid lifted, a young woman leapt out, her face flushed from the heat. I recognized her instantly, Isabella, the woman Patrick had been cheating with. Wait, it's not what it looks like. She's just a colleague, Patrick stammered, his face pale and sweaty. Really? And does your colleague often hide in the trunk of your car after work? I asked, crossing my arms. I reached into my bag and pulled out a piece of paper, holding it up for both of them to see. And what about this? A little drive date on Sunday. Their faces turned as white as ghosts. I had printed out their flirty email exchanges as evidence, and there was no denying it now. Thanks to Doris, I had found out everything. The truth had come out a few weeks before, when Doris, in her innocent way, had told me, Daddy's been spending a lot of time with Isabella. I'm sad because she's taking him away from me. Her words had made me suspicious, and after some careful digging, I found undeniable proof of his affair. That fake plan I told him about? It was all part of my strategy. I had no intention of letting him get away with it. And here we were, standing by the open trunk, his lies unraveling. Hey, it's unfair to go through my phone without permission, Patrick protested, his body tensing in response to my sarcastic words. His absurd defense made me laugh out loud. I had thought his constant late nights were due to work, but clearly, they were spent with his affair partner, Isabella. No doubt the money he claimed was for business expenses had been funding their dates, while he took out his frustrations on me. Who's really being unfair here? I shot back, pulling my phone from my pocket. By the way, I've been recording everything since this all started. Their faces blanched as I calmly revealed the extent of my preparation. Actually, I knew this day would come, so the moment we got in the car, I hit the record button, and that's not all. The evidence I've collected isn't just messages or this video. I installed hidden cameras in the house and garage. Isabella, I know everything about you, too. Both Patrick and Isabella turned ghostly pale under the weight of my words. My fury was directed at both of them. Patrick had betrayed me, but Isabella was just as guilty, fully aware that he was married yet still choosing to continue the affair. I had done my homework. Isabella was a 25-year-old junior employee in his department, and the messages between them revealed how shamelessly they carried on despite knowing the harm they were causing. I'm sorry, Rebecca, Patrick stammered, clearly caught off guard by how thoroughly I had cornered him. I looked at them both with cold disdain. The man who once commanded my love now whimpered pathetically, but my anger wasn't so easily swayed. I won't forgive either of you, I said, my voice firm. You'll both be paying for this, with alimony. Realizing the gravity of their situation, they crumbled before me, sinking to their knees. In the end, I divorced Patrick. The recordings, the texts, and the video evidence I had gathered all paid off. They were both ordered to pay me $300,000 in compensation, and Patrick was required to pay $500 a month in child support. Their affair became public knowledge at work, and it wasn't long before the scandal turned their professional lives upside down. With whispers circulating among their colleagues, both of them eventually resigned, their reputations shattered. From what I've heard, they're now struggling under the burden of compensation, their once reckless lives in ruins. As for me, life has never been better. Doris and I enjoy our peaceful days together, and I continue to shower her with love. She is, after all, my daughter with a remarkable gift.